Ethan Page. So we have some news about Ethan Page. Not so much news about his future, possibly about his immediate future though, because Ethan Page, one half of the tag team known as the North in Impact Wrestling, former Impact World Tag Team Champion, one half of the longest reigning tag team champions in the history of Impact Wrestling, has officially wrapped up and finished his 2020 wrestling schedule. This is after he's come into contact with someone that has tested positive for COVID-19. Now, Ethan Page, over the course of this entire pandemic, on his YouTube channel, on his vlogs, on his social media, has been very open and been very conscious of only working select wrestling shows, and he even made the decision himself not to run any Alpha One wrestling events in Canada, his own promotion Alpha One, which is usually carried on the Impact Plus streaming service. He hasn't run any Alpha One wrestling events in Canada until things are more secure when it comes to the current pandemic and the current climate that we're in. And he's now cancelled his final wrestling booking of 2020, which was an ACW show in Wisconsin on Friday, December 4th. Now, this comes on the back of a recent story that we covered here on the channel, whereby it was reported that someone at a recent Impact Wrestling taping tested positive for COVID-19, actually tested positive at the most recent Impact Wrestling taping, and very few wrestlers at the taping backstage were notified of this positive test result. And even I said very few were notified, a lot of people were not, and the people who were not notified of this positive test were, quote, very hot, end quote, at not finding out directly from management. Now, Ethan Page posted a tweet about this, saying that he wasn't going to be able to make the show. He said, quote, wanted to apologize for ACW Wisconsin for having to miss December 4th's upcoming event. I've come into contact with a COVID positive person and will need to quarantine for 14 days. That will wrap up my 2020 schedule. Sorry, at WWE Hornswoggle, broken heart, end quote. Now, I wanted to cover this story because I covered obviously the story on Friday about the positive test at the recent Impact taping, and to be honest, I got some of the feedback I got for that was actually quite surprising. Now, the majority of it, like always, the community on this channel is absolutely fantastic. I really enjoy interacting with you guys, chatting, especially about Impact. We cover a lot of Impact Wrestling here on the channel, but some of the other response to that video, some of it was quite a bit of heat. I got quite some heat for reporting about the story on Friday. Some of the response was, oh, it's not true. It's definitely not true. It definitely isn't true. How can it be true? You're just assuming things. You're making assumptions. You're assuming things are there when it isn't there. Impact would never be so reckless. You should use your words more carefully. It definitely isn't true. Well, Ethan Page himself, he's just pulled out of appearances and is quarantining about this. And, I mean, that is evidence that the story does have some validity to it. Is everything on there absolutely true? We don't know. And I said this on Friday during the video. Dave Meltzer, his reporting, it's not 100%, and it is a bit iffy. But his report was also picked up by various wrestling media outlets, which gives it more validity to it. Dave Meltzer obviously initially reported it, but it's been reported by Fightful, and Sean Ross Sapp wouldn't have anything on his website over there at Fightful that isn't accurate. He's got very close ties to people at Impact. His Fightful Select service always breaks a lot of Impact Wrestling stories, specifically when it comes to Ethan Page, his contract situation. Fightful, the Select Patreon service that Sean Ross Sapp does, have been all over that. They wouldn't report the story that Meltzer said if they didn't think it was valid. It was also picked up by Wrestling Inc. as well. Yes, they picked up on the report, but they also check it out themselves. If they haven't heard something that is valid from that, if isn't something that is similar to that, they won't report it. And so that gives it validity. And there is no coincidence. There is no coincidence that a story coming out Friday about this lack of testing, about this someone testing positive at the Impact Wrestling taping, people not being able to find out and only finding out through gossip, only a select amount of people finding out. Suddenly today, on Monday or over the weekend, it's now reported that Ethan Page is quarantining and having to cancel the rest of his bookings because he's come into contact with someone that has tested positive. That isn't a coincidence. Those two stories are linked. And the report said last week, the person who tested positive travels in a group of people that are very close and travel in close proximity to each other. Obviously, Ethan Page is obviously one of those people. He has to be. Now, obviously, Ethan Page himself hasn't tested positive, but if you come into contact with someone that has tested positive, you must do a two-week quarantining period. You must do that. which is what Ethan Page is doing right now. And I'm sure that a few other people on the Impact Wrestling roster have had to do the same. They just haven't come out and publicly said it yet. So we'll have to wait and see for that. Thankfully, Impact don't have to do any extra tapings at this point. They've done the remainder of their tapings for 2020. There's a report that's come out about multiple endings, multiple outcomes, segments being filmed with different talent, matches being filmed with different talent, multiple talents to ensure that Impact aren't caught cold when it comes to contract expiring. We're going to do a video that's going to post later today about that, so I won't go straight into that. But my opinion on this whole situation when it comes to the lack of testing, when it comes to the report that came out last week, my opinion really hasn't changed on it. Now, like I said before in the video Friday, I think some people wanted to ignore that I said this, but it is the case, and it's the case with any report or anything you read online, regardless if it's about pro wrestling for that matter. It's only a report. It's only a report, but once it starts coming from multiple people, like in any news piece or anything like that, once it starts coming from multiple people, multiple outlets, then it does start to have validity. If it is true that Impact haven't been doing full COVID testing at their tapings, it doesn't look good. If it's true, if that report is true, it's highly irresponsible. And I mentioned this before when I did the video on Friday. A lot of these guys and a lot of these talents that work for Impact Wrestling, that are signed to Impact Wrestling contracts, a lot of them work on the independent scene. A lot of them, and they do independent shows, they do independent dates. And if Ethan Page hadn't been alerted to this positive test that obviously occurred at the Impact taping last week, if he hadn't been alerted, he could have been completely asymptomatic, had no symptoms, wouldn't even know that potentially he had the virus. We don't know if he's tested positive. He's just quarantining at the moment. But he could have been potentially carrying the virus. He could have gone to this independent show and potentially he could have passed it on. And he wouldn't have known because he wasn't tested at the Impact taping. And if the reports are true, the Impact officials didn't tell the majority of the wrestlers there. And then he works an independent show with a ton of wrestlers and a ton of fans there as well. And they don't do testing at the majority of these independent dates. Some do, but some don't for budgetary reasons. With a load of fans there as well, even if the fans were socially distant and they were wearing masks, there is a risk. And that's how this whole thing spreads. That's how it spreads. It's just that simple. It's that easy, and quite frankly, it's that dangerous. That's how it is. Now, let's hope that Ethan Page was one of those talents, according to the report, that was told of this positive test. Let's hope he didn't have to find it out through gossip backstage or from the person who tested positive themselves, because according to the report, many talent weren't informed of the positive test. Many talent weren't told about this person tested positive. Many talent weren't told that you've got to go and possibly get a test, or you've got to quarantine, or the contact tracing system or anything like that. Many talent weren't, according to this report. And rightfully so, when they found out about this positive test via gossip backstage, or in some cases maybe even via the dirt sheet or from people like Meltzer asking questions, rightfully so, those talents were furious. And they were baffled why nobody told them about this positive test. I mean, we're in a pandemic right now. The least you can do is testing, and the least you can do is be transparent with your talent if there has been a positive test. There needs to be systems and structures in place for these issues, for these reasons at the time. Because it can potentially, look, if you're not honest with your talent and telling them someone's tested positive, if you're not even doing tests, this is how it could spread to people's families, to their loved ones, because they've gone to the tapings, they've worked the tapings, then they go home, and then it just carries on spreading exponentially from there. And also as well, you have to think of the timing of this as well. This was right before Thanksgiving as well. Now, obviously, say what you will about the Thanksgiving stuff this year. Obviously, I mean, it wasn't so much over here in the UK, but obviously in the United States, there's been all over the news about warnings, pleading people to stay at home, keep the Thanksgiving celebrations and gatherings small, be socially distant, don't travel, etc. Obviously, look, I'm from the UK, I'm not American, so I can't really comment about that. But what I was thinking when I was reading these reports and when I've been thinking about this over the weekend, imagine if you were an Impact talent that worked that taping, right? You work a grueling taping from Saturday to, was it Thursday, Friday, whatever it was. It's, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, maybe 5-6 day marathon tapings, which by all accounts were completely grueling. That was the word used. by Sean Ross Sapp when he spoke about the tapings was grueling. The talents told him they were tough tapings for that period of time. It's your final Impact commitment of 2020. Obviously, they taped all of the shows up until the Hard to Kill weekend. So they've taped all these shows. You go, right, I've done this marathon TV taping. It's been a tough one. It's been grueling, but it's my final date for Impact for the rest of the year. I'm excited now. I'm going to go home for Thanksgiving. I'm going to see my family. I'm going to see my loved ones, even if it's limited. We all know what this year has been. It's been a complete dumpster fire of a year. And then as you're winding down the tapings, you're getting excited for your Thanksgiving celebrations, then you find out there's been a positive COVID test. And you go, whoa, that's bad enough. But you didn't find it out through officials. You didn't find it out through someone official there at Impact. You found it out through backstage gossip. Oh, did you hear and so-and-so's tested positive? What? And then suddenly your family, your friends, your loved ones, your Thanksgiving, all of it is potentially in jeopardy because of this lack of testing, because of this positive COVID test backstage that you found out through gossip. And all of that could have potentially have been avoided if Impact did full COVID testing at the tapings, which according to this report, again, just according to the report, it states that Impact has not been doing COVID testing prior to their TV tapings. Now, once again, when I talk about the video I did on Friday, I caught some heat for criticising, how dare I, for criticising Impact for not doing full COVID testing. People said, that can't be the case. Impact wouldn't do that. You're just making assumptions. You're assuming things. You're believing everything as fact and you're not looking into the details. Well, quite frankly, all I can do is see what's in front of me and what's being reported. Now, as I mentioned in the video Friday, as I've mentioned in this video, is Dave Meltzer accurate all the time? Absolutely not. I've criticised him. Watch the WWE News video I did today. I mentioned that he's one of those guys, he makes his opinion, he shares it as backstage fact. He says, oh, this is my opinion. That's the backstage news going on. That's not news. I've criticised him for covering bases when it comes to the news story. He says this could happen, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen. Well, that's 4 different outcomes. And then if one happens, you say, well, I predicted it. That's not the case. Okay, is he accurate all the time? Absolutely not. But I think what's interesting now about this story, about the testing and about the positive test, is that this story broke on Friday. It's been out for 3 or 4 days now, and nobody has refuted it from Impact Wrestling. Nobody. Nobody's come out and said, oh, this isn't true. Nobody's come out and said this didn't happen. Nobody says, oh, we do full COVID testing. Nobody has said that from Impact. If Impact did conduct full COVID testing before every single TV taping, they would be outraged by this. They would say, you can't say that because it's not true. They would come out and say, this is BS. It's not true. We take care of talent. We do full testing before the events, blah, blah, blah. They haven't come out and said it. And the silence when it comes to matters like that, it's deafening because it tells you the real story. By all accounts, according to this report, all Impact does is temperature checks. That's all they do. And if Impact did full COVID testing, they would come out. They would come out and say it, and they haven't. The silence is deafening. The silence tells you all the story. The silence tells you how valid that report is, because they would have refuted it, and they haven't. And once again, when you start looking into that, saying, well, why hasn't Impact come out and deny the story? Because it's probably true. It once again raises the question, why is Impact Wrestling the only major company not to do COVID testing before their tapings? Why don't they do that? If that report is true, if that report is accurate, why are Impact the only major pro wrestling company not to do it? You've had organizations such as MLW, Major League Wrestling, Ring of Honor, ROH. They went on hiatus. They stopped everything because they said, well, while this pandemic is going on, the only way we're going to do TV tapings and run TV tapings is if we can do it safely. And if we can protect our talent, if we can protect our employees, our talent's family, whoever, we're only going to do it if we can do it safely. And they've since returned by doing it safely. They shut down, they put in testing procedures, they put in social distancing, hand sanitizing stations, all of that sort of stuff. Even ROH, they worked with the Baltimore State Athletic Commission to make sure they could do it safely. The MLW talent that worked those tapings a couple of, 6 weeks ago that have started to air now with the restart of MLW Fusion, they've got rave reviews from all the talent that have been working there saying it was so safe. They went above and beyond to make sure we were safe when it comes to testing, all of that sort of stuff. They ensured the talent safety was the utmost priority. And now, again, it raises the question when it comes to Impact. Why isn't Impact doing that? And in addition to why isn't Impact doing that, why have they been running this entire time? It goes back to the same thing like WWE. It's all about that. It's all about money. And why can't Impact do it now? If every other company is doing full testing before their tapings, before their shows, why can't Impact do it? It's not a case of they don't have the money to do it. Anthem is a very well-backed company. And Impact is owned by Anthem, a very well-backed company. They've got the funds to do it. There's no reason not to. There's no reason not to if this report is accurate. And Impact has to address this. It's a massive problem. I mentioned it in the video before. All the hard work they've done this year, all of it, all the positive momentum, with Slammiversary being a huge success, trending worldwide, the first time they've been able to do that in years. You've got all of this influx of talent coming from WWE, the Good Brothers signing, EC3 was back for a cup of coffee, got Heath signing, Eric Young's rejuvenated himself. Huge. You've got the Knockouts division is massively exploded this year, really started to catch people's eyes, and especially in comparison to the likes of AEW, the Knockouts division is up there with the best female division in the world. All this positive momentum, it can disappear. It can disappear with stories like this, where there is no testing going on. It's just not safe, and it's irresponsible. Again, if this report is true, and what confuses me about this is, as I mentioned, MLW, they can do it safely. Ring of Honor can do it safely. Of course, AEW and WWE, they're doing it safely. WWE wasn't for a while, but they both are now, and they should be. They're obviously, we know their bank account, we know their funding. Of course, they should be doing it. But a company similar size to Impact, like MLW, like Ring of Honor, who possibly maybe even don't have the backing that Impact does financially, if they're able to do it, why aren't Impact doing it? It isn't March or April anymore. We know, whilst we don't know loads about the pandemic and the virus at the moment, we know a lot more than we did back in March and April, and it's just not acceptable. It's not acceptable for Impact not to be doing testing. Widespread testing is there now. And is it affordable? It does come at a bit of a price, I'm assuming, but if you want to put on a show, if you want to run a TV show, you should do testing. What is the difference? I mentioned with Ethan Page, he's cancelled the remainder of his 2020 wrestling dates, an independent show. What's the difference between Impact and that indie show? There is nothing. There is no difference because there's no testing. There is no difference. And I was criticised for saying if the report is true, it was incredibly irresponsible for Impact not to be doing the COVID testing when every other major promotion, company, sport, production, everything in the field of entertainment is doing testing, it feels like, and Impact's not doing it. And I said during the video it was highly irresponsible. And some of the responses I got to that was, you can't say it's irresponsible because you don't know it's true. Look at the report. It says in the report that a wrestler from Impact Wrestling spoke to Dave Meltzer and said, quote, "It was very irresponsible that Impact was the only major company not to be doing testing." That's a report from an Impact Wrestling star, and they're saying it's irresponsible, and I agree with them. And obviously, on a bit of a tangent, bit of a side note, with Ethan Page wrapping up his appearances for the remainder of 2020, not working any more dates for this year, once again it raises the question about his contract status with Impact. As far as I'm aware, when it comes to his contract, when it comes to his deal, of course, we know his contract's expiring at the end of the year. A lot of talk about, is he going to re-sign? A lot of talk, is he going to go to AEW? Cody Rhodes is a big fan. He's spoken in interviews that he has spoken to other promotions. Impact have allowed him to speak to other promotions. His first priority is Impact, but he wants a good deal. He wants a better deal. As far as I've heard, there's no new news when it comes to, is he going to sign a new deal? He still hasn't signed a new deal. That was the case at the end of the tapings last week, and I think that's still the case now. He's still talking to promotions. And as I mentioned, Impact, curiously, at this last batch of television tapings, they were filming multiple outcomes and filming segments with multiple wrestlers, different wrestlers and different outcomes and different winners of matches, in case people who have contracts expiring at the end of the year, like Ethan Page, like Taya Valkyrie, like Sami Callihan, if they don't re-sign, they don't have to air it. They can switch to another segment that they filmed, or they can whatever. It gives them some flexibility. Again, we're doing a video on that today. That will come out later today, so keep an eye out for that, because I certainly have some opinions on that as well. I'll stick with what I said before when it comes to Ethan Page and his contract situation with Impact Wrestling. Personally, I really hope he stays. I think there is a huge amount more story to tell with the North in Impact. Yes, they're the longest reigning tag team champions in the promotion's history. Yes, they're 2-time champions. There is still more of a story to tell, even if it's just a split up and the breakup of the North. That is more story to tell in that situation. That should be a long program in itself. If Ethan Page leaves, Josh Alexander isn't leaving. Josh Alexander is still with the company, signed a 3-year extension in 2019. He's staying till 2022. That's happening. So if Ethan Page goes, the North is done for a while anyway. I would rather Ethan Page stays. I would rather he does the breakup angle with Josh Alexander, moves into that main event scene, becomes a world champion. I've said it so many times, Ethan Page is a world champion waiting to happen, especially in Impact Wrestling. Right now, he can be a world champion in Impact. Can he be a world champion in AEW or NXT right now? It's a tough one. There is more to go there for him, but I think in Impact, he can be a world champion right now. He's got it all. He's got the character, the promos, the look, all of it. He can be a world champion in Impact, so I hope he stays, becomes a world champion for a couple of years, and then he'll move. Look, he's going to go eventually. He's going to go to AEW or WWE and NXT eventually. He will. He's not going to stay at Impact forever. I just think there's more for him to do in the company right now, so I hope he does re-sign, but, you know, Impact would appear, if they're filming multiple outcomes, multiple scenarios, they're not certain what the situation's going to be with Ethan Page. And maybe Ethan Page himself hasn't made his mind up. So we'll have to wait and see with that. When it comes to the testing stuff, when it comes to the positive test, you know, as I mentioned before, it's very disappointing. It's very disappointing if it's indeed true. I think the biggest thing I could say about it is what I mentioned earlier on, is that if it wasn't true and Impact were highly offended by this and they would come out and say, look, we do full testing before the tapings, we do this, we do that, we protect the talent. They haven't done that. They haven't said anything, which just says exactly what the validity of that original report is. It's probably very close to being accurate. So we'll have to wait and see. I'm sure more will come out about this when it comes to the testing procedures at the tapings, and especially when it comes to Ethan Page's contract in the coming days and weeks, but we'll have to wait and see there. Of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Ethan Page wrapping up his 2020 commitments? What are your thoughts on the COVID testing situation at Impact Wrestling, the positive tests, the lack of transparency when it comes to communication from the Impact Wrestling officials? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, chatting about everything pro wrestling. We talk a lot about Impact here on the channel, in addition to WWE, AEW, and everything under that pro wrestling umbrella, easy for me to say. So please leave a comment below. I'll do my best to respond and reply. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. It really does help us out here on YouTube, go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.